Well, guys, it's 15 after. We're going to go ahead and start. Hi, I'm Mike from Big End Farm. I hope you guys are doing great. We're going to go ahead and start talking about our first time raising chicks. So, we went out and bought some chicks while we were at the Rural King near here. Wasn't really planning on buying chicks this early in the season, but the boys were excited. I got excited. And about $180 later, we had chicks and all the brooding stuff to go with them. So that was fun. A lot of lessons learned. A lot of reading happened after putting the boys to bed. A lot of googling. What in the world do I do now? So first things first. Everybody I've seen talk about doing brooders or chicks, including Rural King, Tractor Supply. Most places use one of these. It's a livestock water tank, or has a menagerie of different uses, but this one is a 2 foot by 4 foot by 2 foot oval. I think it's 100 gallon. Some places label it. Worked really well. One of the nice things is the metal. You don't have to worry about it bending or cracking or the chicks damaging it. If you're going to use it more than once, it's worth the investment, but make sure you shop around. Some places charge $30 more than others. So definitely watch for that, depending on where you're located. Um, got the bedding, and there's two types of bedding. Apparently, there's a fine shavings and a medium shavings. I don't know that it matters which one you get, but I was buying the fine shavings and was having to replace the bedding quite often. The medium shavings might not do quite as bad. Don't know. If you've used those before, leave a comment, or if there is anybody watching this live, go ahead and leave it in the chat. Got some notes here. Been trying to wake up at 5 a.m., train myself to start doing farm chores and having to write more things down. So, anyway, um, moving on. One thing I would change next time doing it is definitely waiting for warmer weather. We actually wound up leaving the chicks inside for almost 4 weeks. At that point, they're large enough they can actually jump out of this. I had one escape into the basement here, which is, if you can't tell where I'm recording, and that was entertaining. So luckily it didn't go far. It was too mesmerized by all the junk down here, so didn't have to chase it. Um, feeders, feeders. I've got all sorts of props here. These are some of the most common feeders you'll find. I got this one at Tractor Supply. Rural King has them. Southern States has them. A bunch of people have them in either plastic or metal. They're cheap. They work. But if I had it to do over again, and I've not found them locally, well, let me keep this over here. There's a make of these that has a rod across the top instead of this grid, and the rod will actually turn. It's got flaps on it, so if the chicks jump up on it, it'll actually spin and encourage them to keep going across. What happens with this model is they'll sit and perch on top of this, and they poop, and guess where it goes? So you wind up having to clean out the feeder a lot more than you really need to. The other thing, piece of equipment wise, I would change. This is the waterer I got the first time. It's just a simple jug type. It works. It's not bad, except for the fact that when this is sitting in the bedding, the chicks like to jump in it. They'll get on top of it once they get bigger, and again, poop and shavings get in here really badly. I actually have already gone out and purchased a hanging waterer. This will eliminate a lot of the debris, and obviously with the rounded top, a lot less perching going on. And if you're going to get a hanging waterer, get one of these jobs. This bottom hook is open so that when you're trying to put it in there, nothing to it. So beats the heck out of a lot of other alternatives. So, but if you're thinking about getting chicks, it's not really a ton of work. You do need to keep an eye on them fairly regularly for the first few days. Um, Definitely check to make sure that they're not too hot, not too cold. One of the ways you tell that is just by looking at them. If they're all huddled up together right under where the heat lamp is the brightest, they're probably cold. If they're all way over on the other side of the brooder, away from the heat lamp, huddled up, they're probably too hot. Don't cook the nuggets. If they're all spread out and kind of just doing their own thing and walking about freely, a lot of times they'll stretch one wing out and stretch one leg out. Then you've got pretty happy birds. So that's something to keep in mind and look out for. One thing I noticed with our brooder, we have some windows over here in the basement. I don't know if you can. There you go. There's a window over there. They really seem to like the natural light. I moved them closer to that, and they seem to be a lot more active. So just keep that in mind. If you don't have an option, but keeping them in a dark garage that may not have windows, and that's fine too. Just make sure you keep an eye on them and make sure you regulate your temperature. You can decrease the temperature after the first several days. There's all sorts of charts on that, but they're actually a lot more hardy than you think. So it doesn't need to be exact degrees. So don't freak out about that. We actually had a power outage on week 2. The chicks were just at being a week and a half old, I think, and had the brooder. It was probably around 79 degrees, 78. I think the thermometer was reading. Well, the power went out and it got down to 62 before I could get a generator running. Well, the generator was running at 140 volts because it's an old generator that has the spring governor that controls the RPMs. And I thought, hey, that light looks a little bit brighter, but all the lights in the house were just off because the power was out, so maybe it's just me. And I checked on the chicks in about 15 minutes, and it was 101 degrees in the brooder. Needless to say, I had to move the light, and they were fine. Thankfully, we didn't fry them too early. Um, but anyways, just keep an eye on your temperatures. You don't have to micromanage it to the exact degrees, but within reason. So, um, one thing I would do as well, and I haven't done it yet, is I would make a top for this. Um, Long term, just to keep things from falling in it. I've got 2 little boys that like to come down here and check on the chicks. Sometimes when I'm at work. So to avoid toys falling in there or other things, I'm probably gonna make a hinged top with some wire mesh to go on here. I did make a really fancy temporary hanging water holder. It's a piece of scrap wood. I put some bolts on it to keep it from sliding. So that's going to work really good. Hopefully I won't have to change the water out every single day like I did last time. That was a lot of pain. The other thing you're going to need some form of a light. You can use either a standard incandescent bulb if you can even find those in your area, depending on where you live. But these clamps are great. You can clamp them on, adjust where they go. Simple on-off switch. I use, sorry to reach over you here. I use these reflector bulbs just because they produce a wider swath of heat. This one's a 125 watt, I think. Picked it up at Rural King for like $1.99. So really cheap. Really the most expensive part of getting into chicks for me was the tub itself. You don't have to have one of these galvanized tubs. You can totally use Tupperware, cardboard box, um, whatever you've got available, as long as it. I would advise not to have sharp corners, have rounded edges on it. One thing that you'll learn very quickly when you're reaching in to handle their food, their water, to put in shavings, they spook really easily and they'll crowd each other and like chick pile each other, and they'll suffocate each other if there's too many in there. So you want to be careful to make sure that you don't have too many chicks in your brooder. Um, there's all sorts of resources online to tell you how many and what space you need, but you definitely don't want to have them smother one another just from having too many in there. So we did 7 this round. Probably could comfortably fit maybe 30, 35 in here. Um, definitely wouldn't keep them past 3 weeks in here. Would have to move them. So anyhow, let's see what other notes I've got here. Let's see. That's really it. One thing I will recommend, and this is not a sales pitch, but if you're new to keeping birds, Joel Salatin's book, Pastured Poultry Profits, the first half of it, I've read through, and so far it's really good. Goes over raising chicks and goes over things to look for, building a brooder, just basic information. It has a nice chart in there if you really want to get scientific about temperature drops and when to drop them, and he relates things kind of like in story form of, hey, this is what I did and it didn't work at all, we had a terrible time, or hey, this works really well, here's what I've noticed. Great resource to have. Something else, if you're going to seriously consider getting into this back to school time, go buy you a bunch of notebooks. um, I've got several of these. This one in particular is for tracking expenses. It also tracks like task lists of what I need to do, planting times, schedules for around the farm. Pick that up for like 50 cents or something at Walmart for the back to school sales. So wasn't bad at all. But you'll definitely want to get some notebooks that size, and then also probably some pocket notebooks. There's a lot of times that you're handling things, dealing with chicks, and I also have pigs now. Um, there's also times where you're out working and you may not want to have your cell phone or it's raining. You can have a little notebook with you to keep notes. For me, trying to open the app on my phone and type on a touch screen when your hands are all like slobbery or wet or have whatever on it. A lot of times, pen and paper is still the best answer. Um, I know that sounds old fashioned nowadays, but it still works. So, anyhow, um, yeah, I can't think of anything else right off the top of my head for you guys tonight. I hate that nobody was able to join the live stream, or at least I don't think anybody did. Um, we're out here in the country and our internet's not that great, so maybe the little watching timer didn't update when people actually stopped by. So, anyhow, um, but raising chicks is a lot of fun. I highly recommend it if you're thinking about doing it, if you've considered it at all. Go ahead and dive into it. I've put some resources on our webpage for some YouTube channels and YouTube videos, and just some other resources that I've found very helpful. I'm going to start trying to develop a few things here and there as I can find time. Um, just on my experiences, because I grew up working on a vegetable farm, so this whole livestock thing is new to me as well. Um, it's a fun learning experience. There have been some times that I wish somebody had been standing around with a camera, kind of like the Truman Show, because there have been some funny incidents, um, from chasing chickens to having a stare down with a pig that wanted to be the alpha male. I won. Anyways, um, well, if you guys did stop by, or if you're watching this later, thank you very much. Thank you for supporting the channel. Hope you guys are doing great. If you have any questions, shoot us a comment. We're trying to stay on top of comments. We have Facebook, Instagram. We have a web page, have email. So if you do run into questions, especially if you're a first timer, or if you have suggestions, if you're in this for the long haul and you've been doing it for years, shoot us a message. We'd love to hear from you. So until next time, thanks for stopping by and take care.